No real point in delaying since the title of the video kind of tells all. I'm a transgender woman, which basically means that pretty much everyone in society assumed I was a guy, and I eventually found out that I'm actually a girl. Ooh, and a lesbian. It's skirts and stockings and chokers for me, thanks. Not that those are limited to any one gender, they're just some of the ways I've chosen to express mine. I've been taking steps to feel more comfortable in my life, and one of those steps is finally directly talking about this here. I've mentioned it offhand at the end of a couple of videos, and I wasn't really hiding it in general online, but especially because most of my content at the moment is from before I started actively pursuing my transition, I feel like I should say this here. I've kind of spent a long time on this channel shying away from who I am and to some extent what I'm passionate about. I've known that I was trans since around when I started this channel, but I didn't feel safe coming out then. And partly because I was closeted, I shied away from some videos that I would have been most passionate about, because I didn't want that tied to a version of myself that I felt wasn't entirely genuine. It was me, but it wasn't quite the whole me. It's a weird subject, and it's kind of difficult for me to explain, but the point is that consciously or subconsciously, I was holding myself back in this respect. I haven't talked about Platinum Games, or Devil May Cry, or Survival Horror, or Madoka Magica, or most magical girl stuff in general, or Tokusatsu, or mecha stuff, or Star Wars, or Star Trek, or Shin Megami Tensei, or most BioWare games. The list goes on and on and on. And there's a lot, so it obviously can't all happen at once, but I want to start making my way through those things on this channel in a way that I can be more proud of. I do eventually mean to have another face reveal, as it were. I'm just not there yet. The rest of this video is just going to be a bit of oversharing, I guess. I'm going to get into some stuff that's been going on in my personal life, a lot of it very related to the fact that I'm transgender. As a side note, I don't think LGBT plus people are obligated to explain who they are or to tell their life story. I've just always been the sharing type, and I feel comfortable enough to talk about this stuff now, since it's hopefully kind of behind me. Hey, just a direct heads up here, the remainder of this video is going to contain discussions of depression, suicide, and emotional abuse, so if you are not comfortable with those things, feel free to stop watching now. In high school, I fell into a deep depression and had suicidal thoughts very regularly. I attempted twice. After struggling with this and pretty bad anxiety for most of my junior year, I wound up agonizing over why I was feeling the way I was feeling. For lack of a better term, I did some soul searching and research online, and on the other end of that, I absolutely knew that I was a trans woman. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. It was like for all of my life, I had been putting together a jigsaw puzzle with no box or picture to guide me, just the pieces. And I finally put together enough pieces to see what the finished puzzle was supposed to look like. Maybe some of the details were still hazy. Honestly, I still don't have all of my life figured out. And figuring out who I was didn't suddenly solve my mental health issues. But for the first time in my life, I finally knew who I was at my core. And that's made my life seem so much brighter. So a couple of years ago, after I had finished high school, I came out to my mom. She was not very supportive at all, to say the least. Nothing too hostile or abusive at first, but the unconditional love I had felt from a person who had, up to that point, been the main pillar of support in my life, suddenly just not being there kind of fucked me up in ways I'm still unpacking. I kind of stagnated in life for a while. I got my associates in liberal arts from a community college, then bounced between majors for a bit at NAU, online courses only, before dropping out. Then I started looking for work, which took over 6 months. I got hung up on the idea of convincing my mom to be supportive of my transition. I tracked down as many resources for her as I could, talked to her for hours and hours and hours, and even found a therapist. An hour and a half away was the closest for someone who actually listed LGBT plus stuff as a specialty, that we went to pretty consistently for about a year. Generally the schedule was that I would go alone one week, then she would go alone, then we would go together. There were a lot of arguments on those hour and a half drives to and from our therapist. The one that sticks out in my mind is her being absolutely baffled that I wanted to try wearing nail polish regularly. I eventually reached the point where I didn't think my mom could ever or would ever be convinced. She directly told me that she didn't understand or support my transition, and probably never would. I never really felt close to her after that. The therapy did help me personally, though. I wound up starting HRT, getting a car, finding work at Walmart, experimenting with what feminine things I could while still closeted to the rest of my family, including my father. I even wound up moving out and starting electrolysis for my face. That being a process for removing body hair permanently, it's slow and painful and not cheap, but it's so important for me combating my dysphoria. So my dad. I had always intended to come out to him, but I honestly didn't think he would be accepting, especially considering my mom hadn't been. He was older and in some ways more traditional. My mom explicitly warned me away from telling him while I still lived with them. She implied he might kick me out or get violent. That didn't particularly help with my mental health. Fast forward to after I had been moved out and working for a while, and I finally felt comfortable and safe coming out to him. This was a few months ago, and it actually went really well. He didn't really understand everything, but he went out of his way to express that he would always love me, and if this is what I needed to be happy, he would support me however he could. He gendered me correctly and said my name and called me his daughter. All things my mom had never done despite me being out to her for years. I was overjoyed. I had never really had a very deep relationship with my father. He was distant, and in high school, as my politics started to sway from his, we would butt heads pretty often. But I thought I could start to connect with him on a deeper level. About a month after I came out to my dad, they discovered cancer in his spine. My best friend Lily happened to be visiting from out of town when the doctors found out. She encouraged me to talk to him like I would never get to speak to him again, and after some convincing, I did just that. Anytime I saw him after that, he was in so much pain or on so many drugs that he couldn't speak. He passed away a week later. I'm incredibly lucky that I got closure, but losing him when I just started to reconnect with him, I don't believe in any higher powers, but it felt like the universe was just being ironically cruel. Thankfully, Lily and my other friends were there to help and support me. I tried to be there for my mom while she was grieving. I figured that I could put aside my negative feelings towards her to help, and I hoped she would be kind enough to not push us towards arguments or disagreements while we were both in mourning. It was like that for a bit, but after a few weeks, the arguments started up again, and now I've almost entirely cut off contact with her. My friends are the best support network I could ask for, but it really stings sometimes. I wouldn't change a thing about who I am, though. A few days after my dad passed away, I had an awful hybrid of a panic attack and breakdown at work. I ran to the restroom, and when I had calmed down a bit, I went and requested bereavement leave. 3 days of that was paid. I took 2 months off. About a week before I was supposed to return to work, I went into Walmart to do some shopping, and I had another panic attack. I just couldn't handle being in there at all. I knew then that I had to quit my job. It was always absolute garbage, after I transferred to lawn and garden especially. My new boss was apparently known to play favorites, and she didn't care for me much. I was given an uneven, often impossible workload and punished even when I did everything I was supposed to be doing. An awful job slowly turned into an unbearable one. I was having multiple panic attacks at work every month already, and losing my dad like that just made it completely unbearable, I guess. So yeah, I'm currently unemployed, which is a special type of scary. I do have some money saved, but not having any income is a constant source of anxiety. While I'm looking for work, I figured I'd try to get YouTube properly going again. I still have bad mental health days, but I've gotten to the point where I think I can get content out on a fairly consistent basis. So here we are. With everything that's been happening in life, I kind of let YouTube fall to the wayside. I'd get a video out every once in a while, but it's honestly been incredibly rare for the past year or so especially. I'm looking to change that. Maybe I'll wind up making some money from it, maybe I won't. But I do know that it's something I enjoy. And now that I've gone public with who I am, I think I can provide more genuine and hopefully more enjoyable content. So yeah, thanks for listening to pretty much the saddest parts of my life story. Sorry if I bummed you out a bit, but I will say that despite everything that's happened, I feel happier now in my life than I ever have been before. I'm becoming more comfortable in my skin, I'm not shying away from the things that I'm passionate about, and I have a group of friends that I love and who love me and that I consider my family. Things do get better. Slowly sometimes, but they do. This has been Callus. Liking, sharing with friends, and my Patreon where you can support me all exist. Keep loving what you love, and I'll see you next time with something else.